Welcome to the August 2017 Oakland County Campaign for Liberty Liberty Action Briefing. I have a very important question to ask all of you.
Are you ready to rock and roll?
It's 7 o'clock. Are you ready to rock? Yeah. So ladies and gentlemen, I would at this point like to invite up to the front of the room our state representative friend from White Lake, a great Republican, a great fighter for liberty, Jim Runstead, who, remember, as a county commissioner was really helpful to us in the fight against NDAA indefinite detention at the county level. He's gone to the state of Michigan legislature, fought very hard for us on many issues there, and he's running now for the state Senate, and we are really pleased that he's with us. I'd like to get a big round of applause for our good friend Jim Runstead.
Well, it's a great honor to be here among all these subversive, liberty-minded individuals.
That's us.
And I've left some of these guides there that have the contact information for all of the legislators. So as I talk about some of the issues tonight, you'll know who to contact if you want to take one of those with you. And unfortunately, I just came from the doctor up in Lansing. I've got a little chest infection, so hopefully my constitution is going to hold up here this evening. But I want to talk a little bit about kind of what got me into running for political office. And it was seeing problems with the government, particularly with the court systems. And that is where really I have found the rights of an individual can be violated more than just about anywhere else as an individual. Because what happens is if all these committees, whether I was on the county commission or if I was at the state legislature, if you're on a committee, say transportation, you make bills that pertain to all of these big projects. If you're on natural resources, the same thing. If you're on energy, the same thing. You're passing bills that in the aggregate affect a lot of different people in a big way. But the court systems, they impact individuals. There's no person in the transportation committee that can come in and say, I want to see all of your finances. I want to see how much time do you spend with your kids? What do you do with them? How do you address them? How this, that, the intrusive nature of the court system is unlike any other department in the government. So that is what I observed when I was a regular citizen, and so when I ran for the county commission, I had a real concern that we pay attention to the laws, to the judiciary, to the actual court system. And when I was a county commissioner, I saw that there was what are called fusion centers. How many of you have heard what a fusion center is? Just about everybody here. You're more educated than most people. Most people have no idea, but they're centers that collect data from all over the individual states. All 50 states have them. At one point we had 3 of them here. There was one in Detroit, Lansing, and I think Ann Arbor was the other one. So I went down and visited those as the liaison. I created a position at the county commission to be a liaison between the county commission and the fusion center. So I went and visited Detroit's and Lansing, asked as many questions as I possibly could about what kind of data do they collect, what do they do with this data, how do you protect privacy rights, due process, to the best I could as a county commissioner. What kind of answers I got, I couldn't be sure if they were actually legitimately accurate or not, but at least being there, getting all of these individuals in a room and having the discussion was something that wasn't being done anywhere else in the whole state of Michigan. So I don't know if they've continued to do that. I hope that they have, because I think that all of these governmental agencies that have enormous ability to intrude into your life, into your personal information, have to be watched. You have to have somebody. I remember Mark Scott. I don't know how many of you remember him, but he used to say, government has to be, you have to hold government like a Doberman pincer on a choke chain and be pulling back all the time, because it's always wanting to rear out and go after more and more power. And that's why I think that we need more people in the legislature who think that way. Not that, well, the government is trying to always do good, it's just doing wonderful, and we just got to be respectful. No, when you talk about the power of life and death, the power of arming people to make these decisions, you have to have oversight. As Dennis mentioned, another thing I did was passed a bill, they were called resolutions, condemning the end of the year Obama NDAA resolution that allowed him basically to assassinate American citizens. This was done at the very end of the year, and hardly anything was said about it, but we did get that passed. I passed 2 smart meter resolutions that said to tell the legislature to allow people to keep their analog meters. Today, I don't know if you've seen these new, I was at a function about 3 weeks ago, and I was having a private conversation with a couple of people, and then I noticed this little tower right next to me, and I go, that's one of those towers. It's like Google or Amazon. You see them all over the city. Google, turn the temperature up. Google, would you check what's in the refrigerator? Well, how do you think it knows that? How do you think it turns, it goes from your voice and it does all the stuff in the house, it sends it to the smart meter, and who gets this information? And do you think it only picks up when you say Google? No, it picks up every single conversation. It's being sent off, and people are losing their privacy rights. And they purchase the equipment to do that. I was looking, here we're having a private conversation, and this tower is right next to us, picking up every single thing that we're saying. And a lot of people think that that's completely fine, that's acceptable. I remember one guy saying, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, you shouldn't be afraid. Well, the smart TV now watches you and your wife in your bed and everything you do. If you're not doing anything wrong, well, so hopefully we can start getting the word out there about what is happening in our society with all of this ability to intrude. Today I put in a bill request that all devices in any hotel or motel room that can record audio or video is prohibited. Because these new smart TVs.
Yeah, so big round of applause,
Thank you. These new smart TVs, see, people don't understand, they record everything. So you are walking around naked in your hotel room, you're there with your spouse, and they can observe the whole thing. I can't imagine people would tolerate this stuff. So yeah, maybe you shut this off in your house, but you get a hotel room and you have no control over this stuff. So that is one bill I put in. The other one I put in today is that currently all of this information that minors use, Google and these other operators retain it indefinitely. And they said, well, they clicked on it, so it's a contract. You cannot contract with the minor. So you can't say, well, the minor bought this card. Look at the minor's signature. No, you cannot contract with the minor. So Google, you cannot contract with the minor to have all their information, all their videos, all their pictures for the rest of their life when they were 14 years old. So I put that bill in today, and we'll see how it goes. Some of these are things I may need your help to contact your legislators and tell them, listen, let's give this some support. Why would you not support this? The bill that I had a lot of help from Machine on was a resolution that would go change the Constitution by adding a provision that says that the government must obtain a warrant to access a person's electronic data and communications. Now you'd say, well, that would be covered. Well, you think it would be, but there's departments all over the United States that don't interpret it that way. There was a department I was reading about that used what's called Hailstorm or Stingray equipment. It mimics a cell phone tower. You can pull all your data. They used it 300 times without a warrant. So they said it's electronic. It's not papers. It's not your possession. It's just stuff floating in the air. So we have the ability to capture all of that stuff. So unless we nail these things down, they are going to interpret it as that's not covered under the 14th Amendment. So that bill literally passed through the House Committee unanimous, through the House unanimous, through the Senate Committee unanimous. Is now sitting in the Senate. We can't get a vote. So reach out to your senator and say, listen, call upon the leadership of the Senate to get a vote on this bill. If it goes to the vote of the people, it will pass overwhelmingly. It passed 75% vote of the people in Missouri. Went through, high percentage of the legislators voted for it, passed 75% of the people in Missouri. I have checked all law enforcement, the Attorney General, the Sheriff's Association, the Prosecutors Association in Missouri. Have you had a single problem with the bill? It was passed in 2014. Not a single issue. So there's no reason to not pass this. It would be overwhelmingly popular. Michigan is being castigated as being one of the least transparent states. This would help in terms of that messaging that we are a leader. We'd be the second state to do that. Yes?
Just had a question. Somebody told me that on the smart meters that we didn't want put on our houses, and if they are taken off and they just put the regular meter back on, Edison's is going to charge you an additional $65 on your bill just to have the regular meter.
That's the same thing I've heard, yeah. I've got the two resolution passed in the county commission, and then I'm one of the co-sponsors to allow a person to have their analog meter without charge. That's in energy, they can't get the votes. So again, there's another thing that whoever, I don't know if it's Shane or whoever is tracking your legislation out there needs to keep people informed. Call the legislators who are no votes on this, and let's get them to a yes to get this through.
What's
Yes.
the number on that bill you're trying to get through, Senate?
That is Resolution C.
Resolution
C, like cat. Yeah, regular Resolution C. So, what else do we have here? A couple of real successes I'm proud about this year. One of them is I was asked when all of these Detroit public school principals were stealing all of the money from Detroit public schools. At the time, we're being asked to give them money. Every week they're rolling out another one. Another one is stole the money, stole the money. I mean, it was every stole the money. So my constituents were saying, do they get to keep their pensions? I said, I don't know. So I did some research and I found out that there was a law passed about early 80s that said the pension can be forfeit by the judge if the judge so decides. So we started doing some research. We can't find one case of it ever happening. And every year there is all over the place, cases you don't even read about, of these public employees and officials stealing the money. So the bill that we got passed through, literally unanimous through the House and unanimous through the Senate, says that if you're stealing public dollars, you're going to lose your pension and any matching money, like a 401k match, all is gone. And that's no longer a discretion of the judge, it must be taken. Let's see, what else is there? A civil asset forfeiture, when you're elected, each year they give you 5 different priorities that you want to push through. One of my 5 was civil asset forfeiture. And just to give you an idea how things work in Lansing, there's so many funny stories I could tell you, but I had put in the civil asset forfeiture. I'd taken a lot of Tom McMillan's bill and reworked it. And so I had the civil asset forfeiture bill. So I'm sitting at my desk and a couple of the staff members for the leadership came up and said, well, we see you have this bill. Would you mind giving this up as a speaker priority? And it'll get a lot more traction and fast moving if you allow us to break it into a package. You can have one of the bills. I said, oh, absolutely. And my goal is to get it through. So every week I would be saying, well, how's it at? I mean, months and months and months were going by. Oh, we're still working, still working. So I'm sitting at my desk and a legislator came up and said, did you sign on to the civil asset forfeiture bill? I said, what are you talking about? He said, yeah, the package is in the back. I wasn't even told about it. So I said, am I on it? He goes, I didn't see your name. So I'm back there, I'm looking, there's like, 8 bills. I'm not on any of them. So I thought, oh, you SOB. I started asking for these policy people, and they all scurried away. They were completely gone off the floor. I said, they can be gone as long as they want. They're going to have to come back, and I am going to be talking to them. So one by one, they go, it wasn't me, it wasn't me. So the the guy who really was the decision maker, and it wasn't even him told to do this. But he said, listen, I know you have this bill package, I know we promised you this, we'll fix it. You pick the bill you want, and we'll go back and fix it. Which he did do, but if I didn't raise hell, that never would have happened. And that's the kind of thing that can happen in Lansing. Some of the shenanigans. I remember I was in my office one day, and a legislator called and said, I've got a couple tickets to the baseball game. Would you like to go? I called my wife, and she said, I haven't been to a baseball game in 20 years. I'd like to go. So I called back that legislator, and so he brought the tickets over, dropped them off. And I'm in my office. I hear somebody come in the office, and they're whispering. And nobody comes and whispers. You can always hear them talking. It may be my staff whispering about something, but this was somebody that came in that's whispering. This doesn't make sense. So then my staffer came in, he goes, Jim, those tickets were from AT&T, and they want them back. And so, he said the staffer is too scared to talk to you. So I walked out there and I was laughing, and I said, so they want the tickets back, and I didn't know who the tickets were from. And he says, yeah, I was told to come get this. This was an intern. It wasn't even a staffer. They sent an intern. These people are like 19, 20-year-old college students to come in and tell me that he's got to get the tickets back. And I was laughing. I said, absolutely, no problem at all. And I was thinking, they didn't like my vote on a piece of legislation, so they got that petty down to the level of, you mean he got those tickets? Go get those tickets. It's hilarious. There's they do all the food and free food and booze. You're all tracked. There's 110 of us. I was 96 for free food and booze in Lansing, and I'm in the majority party and chair of a committee. So I don't get any offers like that. But that was a funny story that they had this guy come back. But anyway, that's the kind of stuff that you see in Lansing that is just incredibly petty stuff. Let's see, what else was there? One that I worked on really hard was body cameras and trying to balance between the public's right to know and the privacy of the person. And it was something I spent an enormous amount of time on, because trying to get this right, where you have a person who's minding their own business, they slip and they fall in the bathroom, and they have no clothes on. And so they call, the police show up, and there is the slip and fall victim in all their glory, buck naked, captured by the video. And there is blooper shows all over that want whole reams of these. They just show them as funny bloopers of all these people. People that are completely innocent, but it's captured, and they FOIA and get this information. That is one situation that protecting the privacy, but then the right to get the information. Let's say you feel you were abused, what's your ability to get that information? So how do you balance those two? And what we came up with, and this also was unanimous, it was not a single no vote, was if you are a slip and fall victim, or it's in your home, or it pertains to you, it pertains to your child, you can get it, your attorney can get that information. So you can't say, I'm abused and I can't get the tape. No, you'll get it, and your attorney, you can get it, you as a parent can get it. But something where you're an innocent person in your own home, the outside people cannot get it. If you say, I think that there was something that happened that you want to put a request in as a person, you have 30 days to request it. If you request it, they have to give you the copy, but they also have to keep the copy on file for 3 years or until the case is settled, if it becomes a case. So that's the retention part of it. And then the FOIA part of it is, if you're not associated with this tape, it has nothing to do with you, and it's in someone's private setting, you can't get a copy of it. And everybody thought that was about as good a balance as we're going to get out of that. So that passed unanimously. It was signed by the governor. Trying to think if there's anything else I'm working on currently. Well, there's always ideas that we're coming up with that right now I just can't think of. But I would say in terms of, and you're probably familiar with this, just the crowd you are, the types of experiences you've had. But I try to make everybody that I talk to aware that when somebody is running for office, it is so easy to say, well, you know, if you elect me, I am going to stand like a brick wall, like a beam of iron when I get up into the legislature. But if they haven't had experience of fighting before they get in there, if they haven't tempered their spine before they get in there, they are not going to be able to do it. There's maybe 5 to 10 people in every legislature that are going to stand up against all of the special interests, that temptations that you have. And it could be a threat of a primary, it could be an inducement with money, it could be taking you out for all these drinks and food and all that kind of stuff. And it's also your colleagues. When the caucus takes a position, and we're all, the caucus is all high-fiving and ready to go on a position, and you're over here, it's hard. You wouldn't think that it would be, but it's one of the toughest things. I remember talking to a group of people and say, how many of you have been in a work environment where it was absolutely horrendous? You went to work, you hated it, it was a toxic environment, you had a toxic boss, toxic coworkers, and about 30% of the hands went up. They, at some point in their life, did experience something like that. And they said, how many of you have had a work environment where you went in, it's pleasant, wonderful, you can't wait to get to work? Instead of the old job where you hated even to go in, you couldn't wait to get in because everybody was wonderful. How's the wife and kids? What did you do this weekend? It was just a great, probably 85% of the hands went up. They've had that experience. And then just say, imagine that toxic environment every day you go to, every single day. And all you have to do is vote this way and you get this pleasant experience. And just on that alone, there's a lot of people say, they just can't do it. The other aspect of it is around here in the, back in the district, not that many people watch that closely all the votes that are taken in Lansing. But Lansing watches every single one of those. So if you're doing the right thing, you're getting the attaboy and you're the greatest things that's going every day. And then here in the district, not that many people don't. Whereas if you vote wrong, you get the silent treatment, ostracized, all that kind of stuff, and not many people know back here. So it's that balancing that the person who you send to Lansing really has got to have that internal fortitude, that internal compass that this I know is right, and this is what I know is wrong, and I'm simply not going to violate it no matter what the pressures are. But there's not that many people who can do it. It's something that they have to demonstrate, again, before they get to office. With that, I will open up to any questions anybody has. Yes?
2 items of interest I'd like you to comment on. First of all, with the intrusion into our privacy you were just talking about, the idea, the use of drones, especially by law enforcement. And the second item, with all the immigration we're getting in from the Middle East, especially with the Muslim population, the idea of Sharia law invading our justice system, so American laws for American courts.
Two good questions. One, I do have a drone bill. I knew as soon as we had talked, it was going to jog my memory. There's other. I have a license plate reader bill. I don't know if you are aware of these. That when police departments now have license plate readers, they can drive through and read thousands of license plates. And they could, driving around town, they can know every single place you've been, every place, every day. Who do you visit? What doctor you go? I mean, they have a complete picture, and some of them were selling that data to third parties. So they're collecting all this data on you and where you go, and then selling off to third parties, and who knows what they're doing with it. And if you take all that plus recordings on the smart meter and everything, I mean, you have such a complete picture of a person, you have absolutely no privacy rights left. So the bill I have on smart meters say, or on license plate readers say, that if there isn't a ping, it pings when, say, there's a warrant for this, like the individual owning this car, there's a missing person, things like that. There's legitimate reasons to have them. But at the end of the shift, if you haven't, all the ones that didn't ping, thousands of readings have to be deleted. Only those things that are pertinent to the investigation continue. Drones, the drone bill that I have says you can't weaponize a drone, that's a felony. You cannot keep any data that is not specific to the warrants. You capture people sunbathing down by their pool, whatever is going on, other than the person specific to that use of that drone can be kept, and everything else has to be deleted. With the Sharia law, that bill is called American Law for American Courts. I was going to be the main sponsor, but I was beat out by one day by Michelle Hoyninga. And basically, what it says, it's very simple. It simply says we're going to adhere to American law. It doesn't say anything about Sharia law. It just says we're going to adhere. We're not going to go to the Belgian law or the Russian law or any other law. We're just going to adhere to American law. Why that could possibly be controversial. We are a constitutional republic, and that is what we're sworn to uphold. And so we're going to use the laws of another nation or a group that are contrary to the Constitution as sworn officers of the law. We've sworn to obey the Constitution. How can this be a controversial? And yet it is. Oh my gosh, Michelle has been just lambasted relentlessly on a simple concept that the founders would all say, of course you're going to, it's the whole purpose of the Constitution. When I have 20 constitutions, by whatever judge is sitting in front of a court decides what, English Constitution, French Constitution he's going to start crafting the laws from. So it shouldn't be controversial, but it is. It's also not getting a vote. You may want to make some calls on that as well. Yes?
I just want to put, this is not a well-formulated notion yet. It just occurred to me a couple of days ago, thinking about civil asset forfeiture as a concept. But I think this legislation could be crafted to, by law, oblige all revenues brought in by any law enforcement unit anywhere in the state get dumped into the state's general treasury, with funding then going back in the form of grants perhaps to the individual jurisdictions that are producing this. But the idea is to eliminate the perverse incentive that exists for traffic violation stops for revenue production purposes, civil asset forfeiture, of course, for revenue production purposes, which is what it's done for at this point, and most everything else, or too many other things that are being done based on the perverse incentive of this will bring money in to the departments, to the district, to whatever, the local jurisdiction. That money should, that incentive should not exist.
That makes sense to me.
And it could be,
I'll check to see if that bill is in. If not, I may put that bill in myself.
Okay.
Because there's been a lot of work done on, as you're aware, on civil asset forfeiture in terms of preponderance of the evidence standard, eliminating the bail on the materials that were forfeit. So there's been a lot of changes, but there's work to do. Yes?
Jim, do you see, in terms of state nullification, some areas where we might see some of that against different things the feds are doing that they aren't authorized to do by the Constitution? So some areas where there might be some nullification efforts that could succeed in Lansing. In fact, thinking about the civil asset forfeiture, I guess there's that equitable sharing program, right, which is inequitable, where the feds, intervene, they try to get it in, and that way they can keep it hidden if people look at it. So are there some different topics where you think nullification might work or might spark somebody's interest in Lansing?
It's going to be interesting. Just in terms of the medical marijuana, is almost a nullification.
It is.
In that respect, because it's still against federal law, and many of the states are permitting medical marijuana to be sold against federal law. That one seems to be acceptable, but for many of the powers that be in Lansing, I find so many of the other areas simply are not acceptable. But if we start thinking about, there's many things that come down from the feds that really we should take a stand on. And if I can garner support, if you're just one person trying to get the traction in there, it doesn't do you much good. It is definitely a situation where you have to try to garner others to go along with you, or you just don't get any traction at all. Yes.
Have you seen our video, The Secret Life of Politicians by Leandro Drilla?
No, I'll bet it's knowing him. I'll bet that's
Here's where
humorous.
you can find it. You might want to
Okay.
pass it around to your fellow legislators. They might get a bang out of it. Okay.
So I can see this on,
So,
online?
yeah, it's on YouTube.
Oh, I'll get to see that. He cracks me up every time I see him.
Jim, anticipating a successful run for Senate, what do you think you could do to, more effectively maybe than you're doing as a representative?
Well, when you're a senator, you're one of 38 as opposed to one of 110. So just the small size of that, everything is much more of a people person, because there's many Democrats I just haven't got to know. I mean, it's just no way. Of the senators, they all know each other pretty well. There's 38 of them. And then a lot of times, unless you really are massively unpopular, you're gonna get a lot more committee assignments, maybe committee chair. I have found my life as a committee chair versus the 2 years previous where I was not a committee chair, night and day difference. When you don't chair a committee, you literally are nothing. You're maybe a vote that maybe they'll come to sometimes, try to twist your arm, and that is it. You're absolutely nothing. When you chair a committee, you have an immense amount of power. If you've got a bill that you want run and the committee chair says, well, that bill is just dead, it's going nowhere. Well, that's interesting, because I've got 3-year bills and they're all dead. Well, maybe we can talk. So you have that ability to negotiate some. If you're not a committee chair, you have absolutely none. So just the smaller group, I would like to interact more with fellow legislators. You just don't have a lot of time to do it. I put in, my wife can attest, most weeks 80 to 90 hours a week on this job, doing it 7 days a week, almost every single week. And when a light week for me is 70 hours a week. I mean, it's very hard with the sheer size of the House to get to know people individually. I'm going to like that aspect, assuming that I win, and become a state senator, to be able to talk with them, to sit down and say, now, why do you say, one of the things I've had a meeting recently with some fellow legislators is on universities. The universities' policies on free speech, not all of them, but many of them, are absolutely horrendous. U of M had a debate society that brought in a couple of speakers to debate whether Black Lives Matter was helping or hurting the movement. So, they're a debate society. They have all kinds of people come in. That was the theme. They had 400 thugs burst into the building, took control of the whole thing, jumped up on the podium, grabbed the microphones, were screaming obscenities, screaming at all the people, cops standing around, administrators there standing around, didn't do a thing. Weeks later in the review, the university review, they said, this was a good thing. This is the kind of thing that we need to be doing. Thug-like behavior, taking over, and like fascists. The fascists, when they didn't like something, they'd release mice into the building. They'd throw sneezing powder off of the balconies of movies to drive people out. And this is what the universities are teaching the students is a good thing. Stop dissent. Put your brown shirts on and go out, stop dissent. So I've said, can you think of another organization in Lansing that could come that absolutely hates Republicans? Let's say it's Planned Parenthood. Comes and says, Republicans, we hate your guts. There's not one thing about you we can stand. Are the gun control advocates come in and we hate you Republicans. We cannot stand you. Now double our money, give us more money. And all these other groups, there's many of them that absolutely, there's almost nothing they like about Republicans. And the Republicans don't reciprocate and be nice to them and say, we'll do anything you want. The only exceptions are universities. The universities, I tell you, most of those universities, it is complete progressive, liberal, government-controlled statism, and that's what they teach to their students coming out the doors, and they come to the legislature and say, we want more money, more money. U of M gets $380 million of our money, and they're just pouring money down every rat hole they possibly can, and we continue to fund them more. I have said, let's stop all their funding. Don't give them anything. Why are we funding these people? So I again go back to you got to get the right people into the office. If I get into that office, I think I could work on fellow legislators to build some synergy, that let's start doing the right thing for the right reasons. Yes.
Jim, obviously you're privy to a lot more inside information than we are. I was wondering, of the probable Republican candidates for governor, do you have a favorite?
Whether, in terms of getting into that race, I'm not going to probably be endorsing. I've got my own, own race to run. But, and there's some things, there's different things about different ones of the candidates that I've talked about that I've liked about all three, and so I'm not going to make an endorsement.
Okay.
Yes.
Jim, you made an interesting comment about how time-intensive that job is.
It can be. I know something or don't do that kind of hours.
But I've wondered about this, the strive for a part-time legislature. We don't have a part-time bureaucracy. We don't have a part-time governor or part-time judiciary. And I wondered if part-time legislature, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, it seems to me that everything else is full-time. Don't we want to have our legislators there at least? And I understand this part about the lobbyists, but I don't know, it just seems to me that making that part-time at a time when we need so much to be done to correct what was done previously, I just wonder if that really is.
I would say, yeah, you have to look at it very thoughtfully. I think a part-time legislature could be done. But in Michigan, we have the shortest term limits in the nation. I don't know if you're aware of that. Almost no one is. We are the only permanent 6-year term in the nation. There's about 4 little rural states that you have a 6-year term and then you can take 2 years off and run again. Michigan's the only permanent 6-year term. We're the 10th largest. It's a complex economy, complex state. And to be churning out 1/3 of all the people now and then making it part-time on top of that would be a challenge. I think it could be done very successfully, but I think it would need some tweaking to make sure that it's done properly.
But would this be to our advantage? I mean, you got the federal government that's basically coming in from all angles. Would it be more of a detriment than?
It would certainly, if you had a good conservative constitutional governor, then you would have, then it would be a big plus, because they'd be the most powerful governor in the United States, bar none. They would have enormous power. If you got a Gretchen Whitmer, again, you'd have the most powerful governor that we've ever had. So you have to think, how do you want that to all turn out? What is our, and by the way, this is in the Constitution. It's almost impossible to undo things when they're in the Constitution. So it's got to be done right. All I would urge you is do some research on it, ask a lot of questions, because when that's in, there is almost nothing that's going to modify it. It would take decades of it being really a problem to be able to go back and undo it. So I believe in part-time legislature and I believe in term limits, but whether the shortest in the nation is going to work combined needs some thought.
Washington State has a part-time legislature, but they don't have the term limits. And it kind of, there's a smaller window there where they can make laws and then.
Oh, sure. If you didn't have term limits, it would absolutely work.
You don't have to pay attention to what they're doing when they're.
Or even if you had like normal length of time, which is usually around 10 years, something like that, 10 to 12 years, something like that, I wouldn't see any problem with it. Having those two combined, I think you'd want to have some discussion on it.
So you might want to take the one on as a part-time legislature and then do something with the term limits at the same time, lengthen the term limits. So
There's discussion on that. That's what I'm saying. There's different.
The same bill as a people's initiative or maybe the state.
Yeah, that's what I hear is being discussed, whether those could be moved around so that it's something that you certainly don't want the governor to have all the power. or,
The legislature can put that forward as a people's, or they could get it on the ballot, right?
pardon?
The legislature could get that on the ballot, they could write it.
They could, but I don't see the legislature, any talk of changing term limits becomes something the legislature won't do. It just absolutely won't even have that discussion. So that's not gonna, it would have to be in the ballot proposal.
All right. Big round of applause for Jim Runstead.
Thank you very much.